Government 112 at Millersville University. This is more video from the Ville with Dr. Greenwald. I believe that at this point in state and local government we have one more body of information to cover before our next exam, which you will be taking at home. And that is political parties. So let's take a look at political parties. This is a little longer module than the ones that have come before us. This will be the longest one probably for the semester, other than we have a rather lengthy one on state legislatures as well. Let's take a look at political parties. First, want to make sure that you have your PowerPoints beside you, either the PowerPoints that are on any of your electronic devices, or if you, like me, have printed the PowerPoints off and have them right by you so you can refer to them during the course of this presentation. I want to start with the topic of what is a political party. How do we define political parties? Again, we turn to that wonderful expert that we've turned to time and time again, James Q. Wilson. How does James Q. Wilson define political parties? James Q. Wilson defines a political party as a group that seeks to elect candidates to public office. A group that seeks to elect candidates to public office by supplying them with labels. In other words, supplying them with a party identification. Of course, we know of the Democratic Party today, and its label is a donkey. And we know of the Republican Party, and its label is an elephant. Of course, the elephant was given to the Republicans by Mr. Nast, N-A-S-T, yes, Thomas Nast, I'm sorry, of the New York papers during the latter half of the 19th century. He was our most famous political cartoonist. At any rate, so Wilson says that a political party is a group that seeks to elect candidates to public office by supplying them with labels. Redford and Truman, on the other hand, have a little bit of a different emphasis. They say that a political party is a continuing organization of leaders, mobilizing large numbers of people for control of offices and policies. Continuing organizations of leaders mobilizing large numbers of people for control of offices and policies. We find that political parties are found in three major places. Therefore, political parties are found as a label in the minds of voters. Political parties are found as organizations that recruit candidates for office and campaign for them. And thirdly and lastly, political parties are found as sets of leaders that organize and control the legislative and the executive branches of government at the state level and the national level, of course. So those are the three areas in which we can find political parties. Find that, what are the functions of political parties? So we go and we take a look at the function of political parties. We find that there are three sets of activities that all political parties perform. First of all, as we've mentioned, they select candidates and they campaign for those candidates. So they select candidates and they contest elections, number one. Number two, the second major function is they propagandize. They propagandize on behalf of their political party's ideologies and on behalf of their political party's programs. And number three, finally, they attempt to guide their elected officials and the leaders of government. They attempt to guide the elected officials and the leaders of government that are in their party. So those are the three major functions of political parties. Let's take a look at each one. First of all, the parties as electors. Well, American political parties are simply designed in the minds of many, simply to capture public office. They're designed to capture political or public office, I should say. And we find that party activity falls off immediately after election, and parties seem to go into a period of dormancy. And then as the elections come closer and closer, party activity picks up until it reaches a fever pitch in the primary election and a fever pitch again at the time of the general election. Parties as propagandizers. Well, we find that the Democratic Party in America and the Republican Party in America, they are not like many of the parties that we've seen across the political landscape of Europe. They do not promote or espouse, they do not support A to Z, all-inclusive ideologies that try to cover every aspect of man's existence, much like many of the European socialist or Marxist parties have done in the past. The political parties, however, they do represent aggregates of interest. They do represent aggregates of interest, a variety of different interests that are collaborating with one another. And they do stand for different policies. They do stand for different policies on selected issues. The parties are not like choosing between Twiddly-dee and Twiddly-dum, as we hear in Alice of Wonderland. There are differences. They were more alike in a few decades gone by. Well, the parties as governors, we find that all the state legislatures, as well as the Congress, is organized along party lines. You find that we rely on party loyalty to bind legislators together so that they will they will coordinate their activities and they will either support or oppose executive programs. You find in the executive branch, the governors, and at the national level, the president, depend on the parties to supply the talent that they need to fill all the executive positions. Just think, as Governor Thornburg came into office or Governor Casey, regardless how long you've been in politics, there's no one person that knows thousands, well, I shouldn't say thousands, but I can say 1,000 to 2,000 individuals who are knowledgeable about the different areas of public policy that the state government has to deal with, and might be willing to give up their job and move to the state capitol, move to Harrisburg in our case, for either 4 to 8 years and give up their former life. There are few people that are willing to do that. So the political parties' help are of great assistance to the governors in finding the people that they need to fill their administrations. Well, in addition to those planned activities, we find that political parties also are responsible for secondary activities as well. These are unplanned consequences of party activity. Unplanned consequences of party activity. One is political socialization. We've talked about political socialization before, of course, when we talked about political culture and political socialization. The parties, we agreed, were one of the agents of political socialization. Indeed, the political parties are constantly setting forth, transmitting political messages, political values, and political information to a large number of voters and future voters. So they are socializing individuals as time goes by. They do preach the value of political commitment, political activity, and they are constantly conveying information to try to help you through what can be a confusing political system. We find another consequence, a secondary consequence of political party activity, is they contribute to the accumulation of they contribute to the accumulation of political power. They contribute to the accumulation of political power. If one person is going out by themselves, it's very difficult to accomplish things in the public square. But if you're joining together with a few people, you can accomplish miracles. I referred to a few weeks ago, excuse me, I referred to my involvement with a small organization called Save Our Lebanon Valley Environment, SOLVE. We find that in 1974, when I worked for Senator Manbeck, the state and the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation was preparing to build a limited access superhighway between the west part of Hershey and Reading. They were going to essentially flatten Bullfrog Valley southwest of the Hershey Medical Center, and they were going to put a 4-lane limited access highway between routes 422 and 322 all the way to Reading. Well, there were some friends of mine, one very, very good friend, whose family had a farm in that area that would have been bisected by such a highway, and there were other people that we knew that didn't believe that this was such a good idea. It was myself, my friend who came from a farming family. We had a retired teacher whose husband owned a small airport just outside of Campbelltown. We had the wife of a neurosurgeon from Lebanon. We had an attorney who lived in Bullfrog Valley who worked in Harrisburg. And we had one other housewife. And those of us who were interested in this gathered together. We came up with our name. This was a time before social media. This was a time before the Xerox machine. And we find that we used mimeographs, and we ran off papers, and we put them under windshield wipers all through Lebanon, because at this time, the Nixon administration, when they spearheaded all that major environmental legislation in their first term, when they formed the Environmental Protection Agency, one of the things that the Nixon administration passed was the 1969 National Environmental Policy Act, which said that all government agencies that were engaged in large projects like this would have to have public hearings. So we knew that they had to have public hearings on this project. They had to have a minimum of 3. So we were preparing for the first one in Lebanon at the Lebanon City High School. We thought if we could get 40 people out for that, that would be a major accomplishment. Well, it turns out that we put mimeographs under every car in Lebanon that we could find under the windshield wiper the night before the meeting. We were hopeful we'd get 40 people. How many people showed up? Over 100. And they all came out and shared the same position that we had, opposed to this highway, with the exception of the representative from the Chamber of Commerce. The interesting thing is the next meeting was set for Elko High School in eastern Lebanon County. And at that meeting we had that first meeting we had over 500 people show up. The second meeting we had over 750 people show up. Again, all were opposed to the project. The final meeting was held at Hershey High School with over 1,000 people showing up, and again, everyone opposed to the project. We will say that the local radio stations, local TV stations, local newspapers were very nice to accept our press releases and to give us a lot of free publicity. At any rate, after the third meeting, PennDOT said, well, there's no hurry to this project. We'll come back to it later in a 12-year plan. Well, it's in 2020 right now, and that was 1974. I think that maybe we were able to defeat that proposal at that time. There were lots of east-west highways at the time. You see 322, well, you'd have the Turnpike, you have 322, 422, Old 22, New 22, and Route 78. We felt that there were enough east-west highways. What we really needed in our area was a good north-south highway to better connect Route 283 and Route 78. For example, an expansion of Route 72 would be good. But for some reason, PennDOT was dead set that they wanted another east-west highway, and we were saying, why build new highways unless you maintain the highways you have first? So with that group, that small group of people, we were able to accomplish much more than if I or if one of my friends had tried to do that by ourselves. The accumulation of political power, groupings allow you to do that. But what's another unplanned consequence of political party activity? Well, the recruitment of political leadership. Many times political parties absolutely have to go into the community and they have to look for good candidates. I've been on many committees that were seeking candidates. We recruited candidates for state representative. We recruited candidates for county commissioner. We recruited a wonderful candidate for county treasurer. No one wanted to run for county treasurer, and we went out and we found someone who had been the first head of the state lottery, and he had done a wonderful job. He retired in Lebanon City, but he was in very good health and was bored in retirement. So we asked him if he'd come out of retirement and run for county treasurer. He accepted, he won, he did a wonderful job. But this is another an unplanned consequence of political party activity, the recruitment of political party leadership. Lastly, a last unplanned consequence of political party activity is simply a force for unification. What holds our country together? What do we have in common, these 50 states and our national government? All we have in common is the Constitution and the office of President and Vice President, the only candidate that we all get to vote on jointly. And the third element, of course, are political parties, that there is a Republican Party and there's a Democratic Party in each one of the 50 states. So political parties and political party activities do serve as a force for unification. So along with the U.S. Constitution and along with the office of the presidency and the vice presidency, political parties serve as one of the unifying links, one of the unifying forces in American politics. Okay, let's take a quick break here.
Okay, I need to go to the bathroom.
Okay.